Howdy, Ags. Welcome to Aggie Growth Hacks, the podcast sponsored by the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M that is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs improve their business, connect with other Aggie entrepreneurs, and support one another. I'm your host, Greg Martin, Fighting Texas Aggie Class of 2001.
And I'm your co-host, Chris Hunter, Fighting Texas Aggie Class of 1998. Whoop!
We got a little story for you, Ags. Bret Richards, Fighting Texas Aggie Class of 2001, the best ever Fighting Texas Aggie Class, is a man that wears many hats. While he is a partner of an Aggie 100 winning Coleman and Patterson real estate firm, Bret is most known around Aggie land as the go-to auctioneer. Bret is a man that is uniquely gifted in making connections, raising money for good causes, and ensuring that everyone is having a good time while doing it. He's also a diehard Rangers fan, so you know he is ecstatic about how this year's Fall Classic played out.
So pass it back and listen up to Bret as he shares some good bull.
Welcome back, Ags. Super excited for today's episode. We have got one of my best friends in Aggie land. I first met Bret. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But Ags, if you have been to any charity function at all in the Brazos Valley, you know this guy. Bret, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your passion for entrepreneurship. Thank you for your willingness to make our communities a better place.
Yeah, it's a great place to live, for sure.
So
we'll leave it better than we found it.
100%.
That's what we do.
And you definitely are a man that is passionate about all the great causes here in Aggie land, and you help through your auction business and everything. So, but that's just one part of your entrepreneur journey, right?
That's just one part of it.
So tell us about your entrepreneur journey.
Well, it's funny. It's interesting. Like it feels like 360 for me, because like when I first got in the auction business in the Dallas area, I came to school here, moved to Dallas, got in the real estate and auction business. And about 1 or 2 years into it, somebody asked me to speak on an entrepreneur, panel at like a high school. I'm like, well, I'm not really the entrepreneur per se. I'm kind of one of the guys in the business. And it's been a 20-year career that now it just kind of morphed into that. So, I don't know that I set out to say, hey, I'm going to start my own business or be my own, boss or that sort of thing. It just kind of found me. So it was unique. But I started out in the real estate and auction business with a company called Hudson & Marshall in Dallas, Texas. And back during the foreclosure crisis and the credit crunch, what we did was fly around the country and sold bank-owned assets, 2003.
Like on the courthouse steps?
No, actually, we sold the actual, what they call it REO or ORE, depending on what state you're in, real estate owned. So what happens is at the courthouse steps is they have a Benny bid or beneficiary bid, and that's the bank's, whatever their number was, hey, you owe us X amount. Depending on the state, depending on the circumstances, they would pick a different, percentage that will be the Benny bid. And then anything, if someone bid over that, great. You've got it, go handle it. It's your property now with any other liens, any other taxes, anything. If they didn't, it would go and revert back to the bank. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Premier Asset Services, FDIC, so on and so forth. And that's who our clients were, right? So then we would then offer those to the public in like a Marriott ballroom or standing in front of the property, if you will. In 2003, we offered 2,300 houses at auction in the country. And by 2009, 2010, it was 60,000.
What?
So I'm actually licensed as a broker and an auctioneer in like 15 states.
Wow.
So I can speak multiple different languages so long as all of those states are in America. Yeah. Yeah. International. It's an international market. You understand? Yeah. Well, we're outside of Texas, right? We are our own country.
That's right.
So that's where I got my start. And then over the years, as that business changed, more opportunities arose in, some benefit auctions or going here and there. I am primarily an auctioneer first and foremost. That's what I am. A few years ago, 2013, Coleman and Patterson, David Coleman, Tom Patterson, my business partners, they were working with us in the auctions, up there. And then they decided to come home. Their kids were becoming of an age that they didn't want to leave as much. I mean, it's a travel job, right? I think 2010 or 2009, I was on the road 252 nights in a hotel. And so they were not wanting to do that as much. They came home to Texas, kind of recreated the business on a smaller scale, invited me in then, but it wasn't the right opportunity. We were still growing the business in Dallas. And ultimately, a few years later, those things changed. The business model and for Hudson and Marshall, we had a merger and then a sale. I'm still involved with it today. I'm actually still a broker of record for them in a lot of states. So that's one piece of my pie. but we came home and Coleman and Patterson gave me an opportunity to get back in with them. So now we're in the auction business, we're in the real estate business, we're in a little bit of the property management business, but first and foremost, real estate and auctions. So that's a little bit of where I'm at today. I don't know if I got the whole. It's a long story. I don't know how long is this podcast.
Don't worry, we can break it up into 5 episodes.
Yeah, it's a mini series.
This is not a Joe Rogan 7-hour marathon, but
it's like Lonesome Dove.
Oh, okay, so let me ask. So you say you're primarily an auctioneer.
That's it.
I mean, did you have a passion for fast talking when you were younger? What got you into auctioneering?
David, my business partner. I was on the rodeo team at Texas A&M. Him and I were on the rodeo team together. I grew up in 4-H and FFA, public speaking, showing animals, rodeoing, rodeoed at the collegiate level, and did not know what I wanted to really do with my life. My dad was a ranch manager and a teacher. My mom's a teacher. My wife's a teacher. My sister-in-law's a teacher. I'm not going to be a teacher, right? It's not my thing. I was an ag business major, president of the rodeo club, College of Ag and Life Sciences, networker. I'm a people person for the most part. I think you'll agree with that. Shocker. I actually prefer, I enjoy one-on-one and, that sort of thing, but I like being in front of a room when I'm in control. It's like, it's like my Rangers, Evaldi wants the ball. That's what he says. He wants the ball. And so I enjoy that. That's something but David's like, man, you might enjoy doing this. He grew up in the auction business. That, he is a family of auctioneers. Okay. And so he encouraged me to do that. And I think it married up perfectly that business with my personality of really enjoying, the public speaking aspect, because I think you have to have a lot of that, not just the fast talking. I mean, you can hear me right now. I'm from East Texas, man. I don't talk that fast really, unless I've got a microphone in my hand, not this one in front.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
And how do you learn how to do that? I mean, like, did David take you aside and say, okay, this is how you should do this? Or?
No, you go to auction school, man.
Okay.
You go to auction school. So I was sitting right over here on Langford Street. I was getting a master's of agriculture because I had a year of eligibility left for rodeo. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Thought I was going to get like the master's of ag business. And for the first time in my life, I got a rejection letter, not the last. Right. But the first time they said, hey, you're not in this program. And I had to scramble. I had no plans. Ooh. And so found a spot in the ag development, College of Ag, and was getting a leadership development degree, master's of agriculture and leadership development. And he encouraged me to say, hey, you might look at auctioneering. And I was like, all right, that sounds pretty good. So I dial up internet, back in 2000, and it was 2002, October of 2002, actually. And so they had a class in Missouri, the Missouri Auction School, and it started on Saturday. I'm sitting there with my buddies, one of which is now an auctioneer in the business with me as well, and one of my college roommates. And so we're sitting there, and I call them up, and I say, hey, it shows online that you have a class starting on Saturday. This is Thursday night. Can I still get in the class? And they said, yeah, but you're going to be like way behind because we gave you this book and these drills to learn and be ready to go. I was like, I'm not worried about that. Can I get in?
I got it.
And they said, yes, you can. So I hang up the phone. I'd take a quarter out. And I said, if this quarter hits heads, I'm going to Kansas City. And this is Thursday night. So I got to get in the truck like that day. Right. So I flip it. It's about, 5 o'clock at night. It hits heads. I call my girlfriend, now wife, and I say, hey, I'm fixing to leave and go to Kansas City to go to auction school. She's like, what? I was like, I'm packing the bag right now. If you want to see me, come over. And so I did. And I drove 5 hours north of Dallas, stayed with a friend of mine that was on the rodeo team with me and just graduated, got up the rest of the way, went to auction school, 105 people in there. So 4 hours, the first 4 hours every day, you learn number drills, 1, 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/4, 1 1/2. You learn tongue twisters like Tommy Atatamus took 2 T's and tied them on top of 2 tall trees. And you just, you do these things over and over again. I'll give you want the big one? I'll give you the big one if you want the big one.
We want to hear it.
All right. So you got your rough and rugged rock, around the rough and rugged rock, the ragged rascal ran. Your Tommy Atatamus took 2 T's, tied them on top of 2 tall trees. And then you get into the big boy, Betty Botter. So this is a little lady here south of town, So Betty Botter bought some butter. But she said this butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it'll make my batter bitter. So she bought a bitter better, put it in a bitter batter, made her bitter batter better. So does better Betty Botter bought a bitter better butter. That's the final,
Holy.
right? You have to you have to give them that one on the final. So and they teach you in auctioneers, chant is nothing I'm saying words. People don't think that I'm saying words. I'm saying words. Everybody's like, 5, 10. It's not. That's not it. It's. I'm a $1 bidder now. Two. Would you give me 2? I'm a $2 bidder now. 3. Would you give me 3? I'm a $300 bidder now. 4. I'm a $4 million bidder now.
Beer.
5.
Yeah.
I thought it was beer.
That was beer. Yeah. Hey, a lot of auctioneers have to have beer before they do it, but not me. Yeah. Not me. So it's you're speaking there. The different pieces of that. You're learning the auction chant, right? It's a conversation between myself and the audience, and it's a statement. It's a suggestion, and it's an ask. I have $2,000 bid. Would you give me $2,500? Give me $2,500, and that's what you're doing. It's a conversation with you and this bidder.
This is gonna.
Now
I'm gonna look at this. It's so different from now on.
So that's why I'm not just looking at. I'm talking to everybody, but I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
If you're the person that's out, and when you have 1,000 people, or 500 people, or 2 people at an auction, and that's why we have the ringmen are out there and stuff, but. Ultimately, it's a very intimate conversation with me and the people that are bidding on that item.
$15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000.
$5.8 million. I sold a piece of property for one time. 5.8, right south of.
Largest?
That's my largest personally. Okay. There's been some pretty big ones out there, but personally, with me on the microphone, and I've stood in front, and kind of worked on some $15 and $20 million deals. But my personal one is 5.8 million. Started out at and it was basically like an FDIC auction. So you start it low and you grind, it wasn't just, sometimes you can, I've been doing a real estate auction and you kind of walk around, talk to the crowd like, hey, you want to start this thing? What do you want to start it at? I'll start it at 500,000. Okay. 500,000 now, 600, 550, 510, 505. No, sold, and that's it. I mean, that's a bidding strategy, right? To try to knock out, to chill the room, if you will.
Yeah.
So you got to navigate those things, but ultimately the auctioneer's chant is an intimate conversation between you and the interested parties in that, whether that's a piece of real estate, whether that's, a benefit that we're raising money for a great cause and you're having to sell the mission, but I'm having to create a relationship with everybody in that room immediately.
Yeah.
I'm having to sell them on that mission immediately. I have to get them bought into that mission immediately. And I have to ask them for their money immediately. So this is, when you're talking about sales and some of the people you probably have on this podcast where you're like, hey, I'm going to cultivate this. I'm going to have this 1 year long, oil and gas type sell that's putting this together. And you have all these things and these dinners and these meetings and this and that. And I have nothing and I am cold. And while you mentioned in Bryan College Station, sure, I think everybody, I see people all the time. And every time I get out of the gas station, Kenny Lawson is like, oh, here comes Bret. Watch your wallets, But, I have one next Wednesday night in downtown Houston with 1,000 people and 3 of them know me.
Yeah.
So I have to achieve the same results, in that time frame. I have to get them on my side.
So is it more fun for you to do something like down in Houston? Or what I love is just the entertainment of people and you sit jokes and I mean that's the best part is like when you send zingers across to get them to bid.
It's a lot of fun and you have to, and that's a very important piece too, Greg. You have to understand who, when you're in these rooms, you got to know who you can kind of pick on a little bit and who you can't, because I've seen it go very, very wrong, and you have to have a unique way of, subtle kind of joking, or this or knowing them a little bit. And people's like, oh, you just know everybody. But I didn't know the first time. First time I didn't. And you saw me in the room at Brazos Valley Cares, and I didn't know that many people. That was when I was first getting started in town. I don't care. I'm still going to throw zingers out there. If they don't work, I'll try another one. I'm going to go out there next Wednesday night. There's a 100% chance it's in downtown Houston. There's a 100% chance I'm going to make a Rangers joke. 100% chance. I did one on Sunday for these same kind of benefactors that are just very, very involved. And if they're involved, they do a lot of good for Houston. And they're kind of a client of mine, friends of mine. And if they're involved, I'm involved, right? He calls and says, hey, I'm going to sponsor the Auctioneer, but here's the Auctioneer, and that's kind of how he approaches it. And so it was their little church picnic. He comes out, and that's it. I mean, they'll put me in a room full of 1,000 people, but when they ask me to sell their church picnic, I'm doing that as well because they are good people and they do a lot of good things. And this is a relationship game, right? This is something that not only do I want to do it, I want to do it because I know what good they do, and let's do all the good that we can. Well, it's right there, and everybody had their Astros game. It was going to be Game 6, and I know this is time stamped or whatever, but we're talking World Series 2023 here, but it was going to be game 6, and I didn't wear any Ranger stuff, but the last thing I said was "Go Rangers," and I got out, and they booed me off at a Catholic church picnic. I was booed off the stage, literally. I was the only Rangers fan there, but it's an interesting business.
That's funny. So, bringing this kind of back to A&M, is there anything that you learned at A&M that has helped you on your entrepreneurial journey specifically?
The other education.
Yeah.
It's networking. It is being a part of something that is bigger than yourself. That is the one thing that I tell every single person that asks me. It's not what I learned in those classrooms, because I don't hardly remember any of that stuff. It's what I learned at the Dixie Chicken. It's what I learned, being on the rodeo team and competing on that rodeo team. It's what I learned in the group projects in the evenings. The people that I can still call to this day. I was asked by Corey Rosenbush. I think people that watch this are going to know who Corey Rosenbush is. He was a state FFA president, national FFA president. And then when we got here, he was a couple years ahead of me. So I was like a freshman, and he is already, but we had a lot of classes together because he had to basically start over. When you're national president back in those days, that's 2 years you're not going to college, because he was the state president traveling to all the stuff. Then he was national traveling everywhere. So basically we were both freshmen. And as he kind of worked his way through what he was doing, he ran for student body president, and he asked me to be on his campaign and do that. And there's 4 or 5 people on Facebook now that I know because of his campaign. He's in Washington, D.C. making policy, right? Yeah. So you can call and rely on him, but networking is the single most important thing that I learned at Texas A&M. It wasn't anything that was taught, it was just something that I inherently knew what to do. But that other education is so important. And I think that's what my biggest takeaway from A&M and from anywhere is you've got to get outside of your comfort zone. You've got to meet people that have different opinions than you do, because you never know when you're going to need to talk to somebody that doesn't have the same idea that you do. That's important. It's very important. And it's okay to disagree with someone. These are the things I think that I learned, but at the end of the day, with those group projects, we had one item to turn in, and my 2 business partners today, when we have disagreements, we have one decision to make. Yeah. And so when we walk out of that room, it's one decision, right? Yeah. So and we have to all, if it's 2-3, 3-1, 3-0, 0-3, when something we don't want a decision, but we all are in agreement that we have to make it, you have to work together to find that and have that one thing. And I think that's what I learned is teamwork, camaraderie, networking.
Yeah. To be able to work through any problems, because entrepreneurship is not smooth sailing. It's not everybody's got the answers, and your cash always comes in on time. It goes out exactly how much and when you want it. You got to fight, and you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So as you talk through your whole kind of entrepreneurial journey, I was thinking, you got into this business, and then you really got heavy in this business in a really stressed economic time during the 2008, 2009 housing crisis. We've had really good economic stability since then, a lot of good growth. Right now, there's some uncertainty right now. Mm-hmm. So what's the biggest challenge that you and your business partners are facing right now, and how are you guys agreeing to overcome it?
Adjusting to the changing market. I mean, there's no doubt, ifs, ands, or buts about it. On the real estate side and the auction side, and there's a little bit of kind of the old adage in the auction business is there's always kind of money in the switch, right? So it's always going up or down. With anything, you guys know this. If a company's not growing, it's dying. I mean, there's no town, same thing, anything like that. You're either up or down. There's no just flat, right? So you have to navigate that. And I think I watched that when I was with Hudson and Marshall, and I bring a lot of that to the table, right? Because my 2 business partners come from different, Tom comes from, he kind of went through the financial route. He's a sales guy. He was MetLife selling insurance, beating on every door, asking everybody, you can't tell him no kind of thing. David's a very left brain, very, he's got his hand on the money. I'm the guy that just kind of gets the right people in the room and see how it shakes out. I mean, we all have our role. And right now we're concentrating on how to adjust to the changing market, not only the changing real estate market that has been, like that yodelay guy on The Price is Right. And I think everybody's just waiting for him to go, and I don't think it's going to do that. It's definitely not going to do that in Texas, in my opinion. But
And not here. I mean, we've got a bubble here.
No, this is the Aggie Dome is real. It's not just the weather, right? Yep. But previously, I went from the company at Hudson and Marshall, and which is why they asked me to do entrepreneurial type stuff back then too, because I was employee number 11, right? And I was the auctioneer. and I was the guy that wasn't a family member of the original Hudson and Marshall. And so here's this new guy, and the first outside the family kind of hire, and he's 22 years old, can't even really rent a car yet, moved from College Station to Dallas, and it's like, I'll just do anything, man, whatever. And so got a lot of licenses. I told them all the time, it's like Bobby Boucher. I was the only one that could pass all the tests. So they got me all these licenses, and my point is I was employee number 11, and we got to like 165, right? Because in the financial crisis, it went crazy. We got, an auctioneer. We're going to go sell 10 houses in Pennsylvania, bring the contracts back, process them. Next week, we'll go to, Georgia and do the same thing. And actually we had a Texas office and a Georgia office, but we went from, having a meeting with everybody in the room to being on several different floors. And, there were challenges there from an entrepreneurial standpoint of, hey, not only are you, maybe you're not so much in title, but we're all in this together, and you just kind of rise up the ranks, right? And you have the decision to, you have the decisions that you have to make on the road, on the fly, and that sort of thing. So I think what we're doing now is that was up. Same for our business. Real estate's been up. Everybody wants to get in the real estate business. Do you want to take this agent? Do you want, can we do that? And now we have challenges of, we don't think there's going to be as much real estate sold next year. How do we make sure that we're still at the forefront of our marketing, right? Because it's not just sticking a sign in the yard and putting it in MLS and rolling on. We're going to have to go find the buyer now, just like we used to in 2018 and 2019.
And that's going to shake a lot of the people who don't have that customer-focused approach out.
It will. And I think anything, we're some of our higher end, subdivisions here in College Station, if you look back at 2017, 2018, 2019, a lot of listings that were on the market in Traditions and Indian Lakes and Miramont and that sort of thing. And then, perfect example, we bought our house that I live in now in 2019, and there was 17 houses on the market in Indian Lakes. And then you get to 2020 and the onset of COVID. Those are larger lots. Those are south of town. Those are commuting from Houston. What changed from Houston? You're not having to go to work every day. You're working from home, and maybe you're working 2 or 3 days. So, what's the most desirable place to be? South College Station. It was a knife fight down there for 2 years. Anytime you put one on the market, and if anybody even stepped outside, it's like the algorithm on Facebook, right? If you even thought about selling your house in Indian Lake, 6 people would call you and go, "Is your house for sale?" And so it's, then you have to navigate how to find the one that's going to close and that sort of stuff. And now we're back to a little bit of inventory. Still a healthy market for anybody watching in College Station. I mean, a healthy market is 3 to 6 months. We're still back of that. We're still a little bit short, really. But we are now navigating that. We are now navigating 8% interest rates. We are now navigating, these sort of things where, it was cash offers, no inspections. Who cares? I just want to buy the house today type offers, to now it's FHA's back in play. We need to get this. Oh, the inspection's 10 days. We want this or we're not buying it. I recently had a deal that was under contract. We had under contract, negotiated some, larger kind of a investment property in town. 2 years ago, is under contract done. No problem. Well, had some work needed to be done and kind of negotiated that. Well, don't really want to do that. Okay. Well, we'll look for something else. There's a lot of inventory right now. 2 months later, we go back and we get the house bought for $25,000 less, because there's not as many people lined up, doing things. So you just have to understand. You have to understand your marketplace. You have to understand changes. And I think, to kind of land the plane, what we're doing right now is how do we adapt? How do we adapt to the market changes in our business? How do we adapt to the way that our business is done? Because there's a lot of technology that's coming to play now. There's a lot of online brokerage that's coming to play now on the real estate side. And auctions. I have a great story about technology if you want to hear that, as far as like a website goes. But I think that's what we have to do. You just have to adapt to change. It's always changing. You're always growing, and you cannot wait to react. You have to kind of be proactive, and that's what we're trying to do right now.
So what's your vision with Coleman Patterson? Like, what is your big, hairy, audacious goal? We talk about that here on Aggie Growth Hacks all the time. What is your 5 to 10 year, 10 to 20 year moonshot?
We are a company that seeks out opportunity to grow, right? We are wanting to be a provider for auction services, for real estate services, as long as we can. We wanted to, at one point in time, we thought we would kind of get so big, maybe we franchise. And then we think maybe that's not what we want to do. Maybe we want to kind of go back to the boutique of where we're at now. We actually now have 2 auction facilities, one in Bryan that's an auction yard, right? And we have one in Gonzales, Texas that's an auction yard that you can do consignment auctions and bring it that way. We are now seeing a lot of real estate being traded at auction again. If you get north of the Red River, a lot of farmland is traded, at auction, and that's what we want to do. We want to be the resource here in the state of Texas and beyond for farmers and ranchers to be a one-stop shop, right? So as they retire, as they, I'm not saying we want to turn farmland into subdivisions. Let's be clear about that. Right. But we want to make sure that we provide a service, a trusted service for people that are looking to retire, to downsize. And I think that's what we're going to see in the marketplace for the next 5 or 10 years. You're going to have a lot of baby boomers that, have these farms, have these ranchettes, have these items, homes in bigger stuff that the kids don't want because they've moved on to Dallas or where have you, and they're not coming back to the ranch. So what do you do with these assets, right? You have tractors and trucks and trailers. And I spoke to someone just a minute ago that's downsizing the rock quarry. And, so how do we transition, from one generation to the next as we have more doctors and lawyers and online workers and less people on the farm? And I think we want to be a one-stop shop and resource for them to know, I don't have to call this person to handle real estate. I don't have to call this person to handle our farm and ranch assets. I don't have to call this person to handle my investments. We want to be that firm that you can call and say, here's the keys. Let me know how it works out. Do the best you can, and let's graciously transition them out of that farm and ranch. I think that's what we're looking to do.
I think that brings it home, Bret. I mean, to be able to provide that service and to be able to do it with dignity and honor, to be like, look, you have amassed this amazing assets over your lifetime, and you've poured your blood, sweat, tears, love into this, and we're going to help you get the fair market value for that. Better if you talk fast enough,
right?
But then be able to say, how can we help you? So that's entrepreneurship 101. Provide value.
It is, and to answer your question specifically, I think it's to change a little bit of the idea of what an auction is on a piece of real estate. I think part of what I did was sell foreclosed assets, and if you think about the RTC days and from the 80s, which is before me, obviously, but I've heard a lot about it. My banker now, Nora at First Financial, she used to be heavily involved in the RTC. And whenever I told, it was Nora Thompson, I told her, she goes, what are you going to do, Bret? I rodeoed with her son at A&M. She goes, what are you going to do? I was like, I just got a job with Hudson and Marshall. And this was, 20 years ago. And she goes, I used to do business with them when I was working for the RTC. And, is it still that? I'm like, yeah, but a little bit different. And I think a lot of people think of auctions, and especially real estate auctions, as fire sales. And they're not, that's something that we need to continue to push on and educate, saying, okay, a multi-parcel auction is an opportunity to not subdivide per se, but if it's $1,000 ranch that's got a lot of road frontage, not a lot of $1,000 ranch buyers anymore. I mean, 1,000-acre ranch buyers anymore. So is it the 100 acres, and how do we do that? And we can do that within the auction system, the auction method of marketing, to where it makes the most sense for buyers and sellers, and it's not a fire sale. We want to encourage the positivity of using that, and a lot of psychology in the auction business, right? We are, the D's, we call them, the death, the divorce, I say dismemberment, but it's when dissolving partnerships and that sort of thing. But that's, you get a lot of that. But even in our death and our estate auctions, and then when we come in there and the family is so overwhelmed of like, hey, I left the ranch 20 years ago, I don't even know. And what's happening is they get the letter in the mail, hey, I'll buy your ranch. They get the phone call, or they get 6, real estate agents or whatever that just call immediately. And instead of looking at the whole picture 360, they might make that decision. I just want to just handle it. You get a lot of that. Just handle it. Just take care of it, right? Well, if you don't if you aren't aligned with the correct person with the right morals and goals, then that could go very south very quickly. And we want to manage that process a little bit. And when it's a situation like that, we want to celebrate that person's life, right? These are all their assets, but it's nice stuff. He did a lot for the community. We're not giving this stuff away. We want to come have this celebration of life at this auction if you want to, per se. So it's just it's an odd business. It's an odd business with a lot of opportunities. So you have to be really, really careful of who you work with in any of our businesses, that you pick someone that at the end of the day is trying to do the right thing. Always do the right thing for the family, for the asset, for the buyer, for the marketplace.
Right.
For the marketplace is a big one. And that's what we're going to focus on.
So we are Aggie Growth Hacks.
Okay.
So what is your favorite personal hack? And you got 30 seconds to answer.
My favorite personal hack is just having a network of people that I can call. I think it's mentorship, man. If you have to surround yourself, and then before you make any decision, you got to look at it 360. Hey, all right, what happens if this? I had a mentor one time that he always told me, you have to make a decision with the best information you have at the time, and then you have to live with that decision. And I think part of that is making sure that you lean on, your team, your network, to say, all right, I'm about to make a pretty big decision. What do let's look at this thing together and ask. And I think that's mine. I just like to make sure that we vet it and run it by. And, once you make it, it's made. And so that's my hack, I think.
Awesome. Love it. So what's your favorite business hack?
I'm trying to think how to even approach that question. Look for opportunity. Look for opportunity, even though if it's not in your comfort zone. We've gotten into some businesses that probably didn't seek out to do that. And, one particular business, we say, yeah, we're interested in doing that. And then trying to get the financing behind it, call our banker, and she says, well, what about this one? So we ended up with two of the same business, in the same, 3-month period. So I think look for opportunity is the business hack, and always be looking.
Bret, what's the best bit of advice you've been given? And 2001 Aggie points, if you can tell us how you applied it.
Just be present. I think is the best one is be present. I think when I was growing up in the auction business, before family, before kids, I poured myself into that portion of the business. We weren't even entertaining having kids because it wasn't feasible for that portion of my life. I needed to be present when I was building my career. And then whenever that changed to say, okay, we've kind of got this where we think we want it, we planned it out a little bit. Okay, now let's start the family, right? So now I have to make sure that Bret during the day, Bret that does 2 car auctions a week, when I'm do my car auctions in Houston, I'm present for that person. I work for my seller that day. I'm present for him. But when I get home and it's time to coach Little League and it's time to coach basketball and go watch my daughter at volleyball, I need to be present. And I think that I need to focus on being a dad, because that's probably the biggest and best job that I have. So be present.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree with that. So Bret, how can the Aggie Growth Hack Network get in touch with you and support you moving forward?
Yeah, they can follow. Obviously, we're on Facebook everywhere. Coleman and Patterson Auctioneers has its page. We have Coleman and Patterson has a page. Bret Richards Coleman has Patterson has a page. You give me a call, 214-435-5050. I'm all booked up on auctions, so don't be calling. I tell Greg all the time, Greg, I'm going to tell everybody. I was like, no, that's fine. It's okay. We're good. I enjoy doing them, love doing them, and we're gonna be present every time we do one. But the old schedule right now in this chapter of life with an 11 and an 8-year-old is we're focused on that. We got a big volleyball match on Sunday, but. You can follow us at Coleman and Patterson pretty much anywhere Instagram. Show enough _B. That's me on Instagram. But it's mostly for personal stuff. So I try to keep that stuff separate, man.
Well, Bret, thank you again so much for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for making our communities and the people that you serve better. And best of luck to you and your partners.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I'd like to come back with, get their opinion on this, one time as well. So this was a good little segue, and then maybe having the 3 of us on.
Part one. Part 2 coming to you soon.
Part 2, Gus heads north on the next miniseries.
Yeah, sounds great.
Gus heads north. All right, guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Well, how about that, Ags? Was that pretty awesome or what? I know that I took a lot away from Bret as he talked about his business. What were your biggest takeaways there, Greg?
Well, my first biggest takeaway is that I don't have the tongue dexterity in order to actually be an auctioneer. You know, some of those tongue twisters, I was telling Sarah and Grayson about it afterward, and it's like I was messing them all up. So I'm gonna stick with, financial CFO stuff and let Bret do the auctioneering. But my real takeaway was that I loved how Bret sees customer value and how he really approaches that in the different facets of his businesses. And really to be able to have so much empathy and to really dig in to say, okay, what is most important to this customer? What's the dominant buying motive, to use a sales jargon, but really to be able to say, how does this customer need value and how can we connect what we're selling, whether that be real estate or an auction item at a charity event, to make sure that value is communicated to the customer. That's a skill that I think more entrepreneurs need to hone a little bit better, because if we do that, then the stress of quote unquote selling goes away, because you're not selling, you're just simply providing value. What about you?
Well, I 100% agree with you, but I have to go with the best advice that he was given, right? And that was be present. I think that is so important for us entrepreneurs to be able to leave work at work, and to when we're at home, when we're with our families, to be present there. And when we're at work, let's be present there, right? And not having things cross over. And it's really, really hard as an entrepreneur for that to happen, right? And especially if you're working out of your home or you're a solopreneur, that a lot of times things bleed into our lives. But it is just so important to give our presence, which honestly is our greatest gift that we could possibly give to our family, right? Give our presence to them and be fully present. So that was my biggest takeaway there.
And Chris, this strikes home for me more now than it did 7 months ago. You are spot on. And it was really great to hear how Bret challenged himself and really said, this is important, and I'm going to make the most important thing the most important thing. So great conversation. Ags, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Aggie Growth Hack. So we hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you learned something. If you're not connected with Bret and his team at Coleman and Patterson or his other companies, make sure you do that. If you're not connected with Aggie Growth Hacks and Chris and I on social media, make sure you reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you. We'd love to learn your story and maybe have you on a future episode. And while you're at it, before you shut off this podcast, hit a thumbs up, a like, and share Aggie Growth Hacks so that we can get this podcast and this message out to more Aggie entrepreneurs.
We want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M University. Since 1999, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship has served as the hub of entrepreneurship at Texas A&M. If you're an Aggie entrepreneur or even a wantrepreneur, head over to their website right now to find a program that's right for you. Just go to aggiegrowthhacks.com/McFerrin right now. Well, Ags, join us next time when we connect with another great Aggie entrepreneur and learn how they hack their growth. Until then, I'm Chris Hunter.
And I'm Greg Martin. Thanks and gig 'em.